Season 2 is absolutely heading in the right direction, and while episodes 1 and 2 were still a bit slow in my opinion, episode 3 is definitely an indicator that they'll stop dragging their feet. What's going on, beautiful people? It's the most informed, Caped Informer, here to provide a breakdown and recap of the 3 episodes HBO Max released today for Season 2 of Doom Patrol. Ah yes, Doom Patrol. A superhero show that proves sometimes our biggest villains are often ourselves.
Oh brother, this guy stinks!
If you haven't given Season 1 a watch yet, I definitely recommend you to, and whether you have or have not, I'd also recommend you high-fiving that subscribe button, as I will be providing you all with full and in-depth recaps every episode coming out this season. Don't be out here missing out, guys. We're gonna get deep in these breakdowns, people. Real deep. HBO Max was gracious enough to drop the first 3 episodes all at once, so we're going to, of course, properly break down each of them one at a time. Alright, where should we start? How about episode 1? Season 2 wastes no time picking up from what seems like a few days later after the end of Season 1. After the final climactic battle between Mr. Nobody, in which resulted in a citywide bout with a Godzilla-sized rat and cockroach, the team finds themselves miniaturized, all except Larry. Evidently, they haven't yet found a cure for their shrunken states, but would you believe this is far from the team's largest concern? They all end up having their own personal issues at the moment, however, they all collectively agree Niles being public enemy number 1. Nobody seems to have forgotten the bomb he dropped on them in the finale, revealing that all of their tragedies were purposely concocted himself for the sake of scientific research. If this wasn't enough, Niles' daughter, Dorothy, now rescued, is somewhat intruding on their whole Doom Patrol vibe, and let's just say none of the members are exactly well equipped or qualified to deal with kids. Jane is haunted by a time for change sign in her subconscious, which can only really allude to one thing. Cliff manages his anger by beating the crap out of feral rodents, and Larry is having some more introspective time with flashbacks to moments with his neglected son. The only character that appears to be keeping it somewhat together is Rita, who arrives to the conclusion that she actually does want to become a superhero and recruits Cyborg to help her harness her true power. Go Rita! Niles is visited by Willoughby, who offers him a deal in return for returning him and the team to normal size. He wants the talisman Niles carries around his neck, which up until this point I don't think the show alluded to. Niles immediately refuses, but we can all tell this really isn't the end of all that. Dorothy, everyone's favorite person, suddenly disappears, leading the team into a mass state of panic. Well, some people. They find this little girl trying to feed rats. She, however, becomes instantly petrified with fear after witnessing a mother rat eating one of her babies. At this point, we realize that Dorothy isn't like other little girls. And in saying that, I mean she conjures horrific monstrosities from inside her head, of which she calls her imaginary friends. She summons one of these beasts, but they don't disappear until Niles is able to calm her down. It all becomes a bit clear as to why Niles locked up Dorothy in the first place. Flash forward, Niles ends up trading his talisman to Willoughby to reverse the spell, and the team is back in action. Cyborg takes off for some more personal time, and all would seem well until, of course, episode 2. This episode, just like the first one, opens in a flashback. Niles discovers his long-lost daughter, of which he didn't know existed, Dorothy, at a circus, where she is cruelly placed as the main attraction. One of her friends is summoned and is antagonized by one of the performers before laying waste to the entire audience. All except Niles, of course. Niles adopts, or I guess readopts, his daughter and decides to hide her in Danny, which is now a brick in present day. Don't ask. Back to present day, and Cliff demands some more answers from Mr. Niles Calder. He gets him to reveal that his end goal was immortality, so that he could properly take care of his daughter. His experiments on them were all failures. The talisman he carried provided him temporary immortality, which he of course gave away to Willoughby. When the team realizes that Niles is indeed dying now, mostly Rita opts to save Niles. With some newly obtained info, Rita hatches a plan to steal Continuinium from Dr. Time. Continuinium. It's described as a space mineral that controls time. After some objection and caution from Niles, Rita, Cliff, and Jane are transported to Dr. Time's time capsule, aka his own personal skating rink. It didn't take long, but Doom Patrol turned an otherwise serious mission into another comical parody, and how can you not love this show for that? Dr. Time, of course, wears a clock-like helmet on his head, which they soon realize is the man's actual head, when Rita accidentally cracks it open. After a clumsy attempt to get their hands on the Continuinium, the team ends up screwing it all up and getting booted out by Dr. Time. Operation Continuinium is a dud. Later that day, Jane meets with what I guess you can call her personality counselor, and they allude to someone else becoming their primary. Larry and Cyborg were off doing their own thing this episode. I mean, they each have their own reason, but it honestly is just starting to feel like the show doesn't quite have a spot for them right now, which is disappointing because the last season did so much for their development. Larry goes off to show up at his late son's funeral, and Cyborg makes the decision to join an anonymous trauma group. Except it's not really anonymous, as everyone kind of knows he's Cyborg, the superhero dude. He meets this chick, Roni, who of course gives him a hard time at first, but they do reluctantly hit it off after, well, trauma bonding, I guess. After going out for coffee or something, Roni encounters a mugger, and before Cyborg can even spring into action, Roni has him on his back. The two argue after Cyborg insists on calling the police and having him arrested, where Roni then comes up with a really stupid point that ends it all. People shouldn't be judged on the worst things they've done. Yeah, but sometimes they should. I guess Roni isn't a big fan of cancel culture, which leads us into episode 3, you guys. Episode 3. Okay, so this episode is probably the best out of all of them so far. It also, as the past 2 episodes, starts off in a flashback with Niles, this time as a young boy. He encounters a new villain, Red Jack, as he appears to be stabbing a woman to death, releasing a flurry of butterflies out of her body. Yeah, I guess that's this villain's thing. Butterflies. Back in present day, Red Jack reaches out to Niles via calling card, notifying him that he's kidnapped Larry and that he requires an audience with him. Rita and Niles go after him via Butterfly Express, I guess. Meanwhile, Cliff embarks on a team mission with Jane to finally see and talk with his daughter, Clara. Well, kind of a team mission. Jane kind of goes off into her mind for a period of time, while Cliff engages in an awkward dialogue with Clara that results in her calling the cops on him. Yeah, I mean, nothing to see here, just some giant robot here at your doorstep claiming to be your dead dad. What could go wrong? Also, meanwhile, Jane's personalities request a word with her in an intervention. They pretty much all vent their frustrations with her guidance and end up providing her an ultimatum: walking away from Niles and the team, or they'll delegate someone else as their primary. Also meanwhile, Cyborg and Roni get into some booyah back at her place. He reveals to her that she's the first girl he's made himself vulnerable with, mistake, since his accident so many years ago. She seemingly looks to give him the slide, but he insists on them seeing each other again on a date. Back at Red Jack's Palace of Torture, the villain attempts to make Niles his equal, as causing other people pain alone has just lost his touch. Niles, of course, refuses, and in penance, Red Jack proceeds to turn him, Rita, and Larry into butterflies, in what seems like the most painful transformation ever. Rita is able to save Larry from entrapment, and Niles is able to deliver a finishing blow to Red Jack with his handy dandy dagger. I happen to really like Red Jack, and in fact, he may be my favorite villain of the series thus far. He's pretty terrifying despite being kinda campy and over the top. Such is this series. 2. Finally finish this episode. Dorothy breaks Danny, the brick. Cyborg bails on his date with Roni after finding reports of her being a war criminal, and Jane gets officially blocked outside of her body. Season 2 is absolutely heading in the right direction, and while episodes 1 and 2 were still a bit slow in my opinion, episode 3 is definitely an indicator that they'll stop dragging their feet. Anyways, what were your thoughts on the first 3 episodes? Are you enjoying Doom Patrol so far? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And of course, remember to subscribe for more episode breakdowns.